Hey guys, it's Shelley and Jason Martinkus. Welcome back to Redemptive Living Radio. Thank you so much for joining us. And, I just wanted to mention really quick, we don't know quite yet how the deck will be set whenever we're just recording episodes right now, and then we'll be launching them, I think, around Thanksgiving, Christmas time for season 8. And we had mentioned in a previous episode that we've already recorded a bit of an appliance update. Do just want to share that Jason has now fixed our freezer. He was under there a couple of days ago with a flashlight, figuring out why we were getting this loud noise that, again, I think we talked about a couple of weeks ago.
The compressor rattling against the bracket on the underside.
Yeah.
Don't understand how
the
that
amount
can be,
of money Jason has saved us by being handy. I can't even put a dollar amount on it. It's been really great.
Offset by the things where I thought I was being handy that ended up costing us more.
This is true.
Remember one of the episodes we talked about the couches that I ruined?
Yeah, when you put the vacuum cleaner on the couch and the brush was on.
I'm probably about break even in terms of money I've saved us versus money
What about
I've
the used car we purchased for our son but didn't do a mechanic hold on?
Let's not.
Hey, we're not supposed to be talking over each other.
That's not what this is about.
There's been a lot of those things as well. Me too. Anyhow, let's go ahead and dig into the episode we have for you guys today. And this one's a little tricky. I think it's really important what we're talking about, but I also think it's really tricky.
And awkward.
It is awkward as well. I should mention before we even share the title of this episode, we do have our podcast assistants with us, Orbit and Pluto. They're both lounging. They're both asleep, but that could change at any moment. And so just be aware that they're in the house. Okay. So what we want to talk about is when he is using her as a part of his addiction, as in when he's acting out with her. Mm-hmm. This can happen before they're in recovery, but it also happens a ton when they're doing recovery.
I'm glad
work.
You said that. That's absolutely true.
Yeah. So I want to be really clear that it sure happens before, but we're really talking about even when they are doing recovery work, this is still happening. And in an earlier recording, because we started all over, you made a comment. You were like, do you want to go ahead and share the comment again that we disagreed on?
That I was saying it's sometimes we use our wives as a part of our addiction intentionally and deliberately. And I think more often we do that without realizing it.
I completely disagree with that.
I know you do.
Now you know.
Now I know.
Completely disagree with that.
Yeah.
I think, and then you said, well, in our case.
Yeah, I was saying in our story, I did that with you and I didn't know I was doing that. I never conceptualized like, I'm just substituting you for the pornography or, fill in the blank. I didn't realize that until light was shined on it and it was pointed out to me that that's what I was doing. And then it's like, oh gosh, that's ugly and I don't want that. But I didn't realize that was what I was doing.
Is this before recovery started or both?
Well, there wasn't light shine on it until we were in recovery.
Yeah. But you feel like before recovery started, you were using me as well as in the early part of recovery.
Absolutely.
It's just really hard for me to buy. I mean, I just think that we're, I understand that with a sexual addiction, the brain actually shrinks. Truly. Mm-hmm. Like there is cortical hypofrontality that happens. The brain shrinks. And so men are not as smart.
I don't think quite as well.
Right. But I feel like we're really, no, ladies, no, we're going to keep the bar a little bit higher than that.
You can keep the bar high. I'm just saying, like, I think there's also so many, like, things that cloud. I'm picturing like a fog machine. Like there's so many things that cloud the thinking around that. Some of it, I mean, some of the stuff we've talked about in other episodes about like the faith stuff, like, oh, well, it's in the context of the marriage where all of this stuff should happen and these sexual things. And it's like, I don't know, there's justification and rationalization that happens in there that almost insulates us a little bit from being confronted with the reality that we're using our wives as part of our addiction.
I mean, I hear what you're saying. And I think that maybe what I would say is, yeah, he's probably too self-absorbed to realize at times what he's doing. But that's no excuse. And I think there's still a lot of men that, sure, they might be self-absorbed and not realize it. But if they actually connected with themselves and did some self-intimacy work, they would see it loud and clear. And they choose not to.
I agree.
Great. Then we can move on. Okay. So there are some podcast episodes that we've done in the past. And so I'll probably refer to them, I think, as we're walking through this. And if not, maybe I'll come back to them at the end and just point them out. But what I was on a team call with my team, and this came up, and I was talking to my team about how more and more I see the need for women to detach, set boundaries, get space, whatever word you want to use, from him sexually. And because we as women can get so tangled up in this, and it causes us to kind of wear blinders and not see clearly. And so oftentimes, and maybe I'm now going against what I was just saying, I think this can be happening in the relationship where he is using her. And like you said, until a light is really shined on it, it just keeps her confused and tangled up. It keeps him in his addiction. And so more and more, I see this as an area that early on in the recovery process, we need to be looking at and asking him questions and really, separating them.
Yeah, kind of extracting the healthy sexuality from the addictive sexuality.
Yes. We do talk in episode 19 about sexual abstinence and the recovery process. And that's kind of where this would go is like, and considering if there does need to be, a sexual abstinence. We talk in episode 43 about the pressure to have sex when he is pressuring her to have sex, which I think is probably a telltale sign that this could be something more to look at. And then we also talk in episode 80 about the shame she carries. When the shame she feels overall, and maybe a little bit, we talk in there, just kind of the chronic shame versus acute shame, as well as shame she might feel when, from a sexual intimacy standpoint.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, do you want me to keep talking?
Yeah, I think you're doing great.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
I'll be a bystander right here.
Okay. So, I mean, there's a couple of things. One is him acting out with her instead of with others. So he's in recovery and he's not acting out in other ways, but he is still using her. It could be sexually, like literally sexual intercourse. It could be other things though.
Yeah. I mean, I think about this where it's like he's asking her to sext with him. Right. And we're supposed to be able to do that because we're husband and wife and we're married and that this is the only outlet. And so come on. And it's like, that's like his addiction, so it might be something like that. It might be what's happening in terms of their actual sexual life. It might be what's happening around what she wears to bed. It might be around how he's asking her to dress or not dress, or any of that kind of stuff. So it doesn't have to be the actual act. It can be things surrounding it that are still part of the addiction.
Right. And so can you share a little bit more before I talk a bit more about her being pushed up against the wall in some ways, but anything else you want to share there of what, I mean, him essentially transferring what he did in his addiction and, now he's in recovery. And so now he's doing that.
Yeah. I mean, this is also what I would call a myth in the recovery world is like, okay, once his sexual energy isn't being used out there at his addiction, now his sexual energy is going to be channeled towards his wife. And so there's going to be increased sexual activity with his wife. And some people would say like, that's her obligation to be the recipient of that sexual energy. And I would say, I think that's a myth, because if real recovery work isn't happening, it really is, I'm taking my addiction and all of the energy, and now I'm making you my addiction. And it's just transferring. It's not actually dealing with anything.
Yeah. And it doesn't help that there are books out there, popular books. There's people out there that
perpetuate
you
that.
Say it's a myth, but that say like, hey, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
This is how we just transfer that sexual energy over to her and you're good to go.
Which again, I mean, how I am with so many of these things is like, I can see both sides.
Sure.
And I'm going, okay, somebody was well-intentioned in that, right? Like, hey, we want sex to be in the context of marriage, and that's God's design, and it's good and right. And so make sure that energy goes to your marriage, but it's not really getting to the heart of what that sexual energy is about.
Say more about that. Like, how is it not getting to the heart?
Because it's looking at the object or recipient of the sexual energy rather than what is actually behind the sexual energy.
It's not scrutinizing the sexual energy. Is
right.
that okay?
It's like we've got this supersized sex drive, and we're not going to challenge that it's out of whack. We're just going to try to redirect where it ends up. That's what's problematic about it.
Yes.
And so I don't want to be critical of those things. I just want to say, I think that's misguided. I think that's misguided. I think what's more important, and I think more appropriate in terms of somebody who's misused their sexuality with a lack of sexual integrity or full-on sexual addiction, I think what's more appropriate is, let's look at why my sexuality is what it is. Never mind, we're not worrying about whether there should be more in our marriage or not. That's not the real issue.
Yeah.
I got to do that. Like you said, scrutinize what's going on with me. Where's this coming from? And I think this lends to something we'll talk about a little bit later, which is some of the tells that actually the addiction has been transferred, or she's being used as a part of the addiction.
I love how you said, like, instead of just transferring the energy and pushing it out somewhere else to her, the wife, we need to look back. You almost like took your arms and you were like, we need to look behind us and scrutinize what is behind this? What is motivating? What is he cope?
Right.
It's a coping mechanism. I almost want to connect it to food addiction, and be like, someone with a food addiction, and they're just told like, you know what, just don't go through drive-thrus anymore. You can just eat at home. Eat all you want at home.
Yeah.
You're good. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, no, that's not even getting to the root of the problem.
Right.
Nor is that going to help him or her live in a healthy way.
Right. Yes.
Like, what are we doing here?
The other thing that's the unintended consequence of that myth is tremendous pressure for wives.
Okay. Should we go to that next?
Sure. Let's go to that.
Well, go ahead. Yeah.
Where I was going with that is like, unintentionally, what that does is create a dynamic where her availability or willingness is the determinant on his integrity.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you write that down?
No.
Okay. I thought you already had that as a note. I'm like, we didn't talk about that.
No. I love how you said that. Her availability
Or willingness.
or willingness is a determinant on his integrity.
Because the essence of that is like, well, if he's not getting it at home, well, if he's not fulfilled at home, like that's the sort of dynamic that's created. What's he supposed to do if ... she, it's just a terrible pressure that gets put on a wife. Again, it's an unintended consequence. And then she's kind of, to your point, kind of backed against the wall going, okay, what am I supposed to do? Because I'm supposed to be technically the only outlet. I'm the only one who's supposed to satisfy him in that way. Yet it's not right. But if I don't, then it's terrible pressure.
So let's pause there. I do want to talk a little bit more about just how she's pushed up against the wall, but I want to pause for a second.
Okay.
So he is thinking like, well, if you want me to live with integrity, then we got to be sexually intimate. And the Bible says blah, 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 blah. And our culture says blah, 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 blah. So let's go back to what we disagreed on.
Okay.
Because I'm like, wait a second. So at that point, isn't he seeing that he's using her as a part of his addiction?
No.
When he puts that much pressure on her, she is the determinant on if he remains sober or not. Like, what is going on? This makes me so mad.
I completely agree. But no, that's not.
Is this because his brain has shrunk? Or because he's self-absorbed? Or both?
I'm going to go with self-absorbed.
Okay.
I'm going to go with self-absorbed, but also, there's also like such a...
Go ahead, say it, and then I need to talk to the ladies.
Okay.
Listening.
It never dawned on me. It never dawned on me that, and whether this is self-absorbed or clueless and obtuse or what, it never dawned on me that my sexuality is broken.
Whoa. Wait, what?
Yeah. In my addiction, I never thought my sexuality is broken. I thought I don't have the right outlet. Because I believe before we got married, once I'm married, marriage will fix it. Because then it'll be all the sex you want all the time.
Yeah.
Newsflash. That's not how it is. There's like a belief system there. There's like this, and again, there's some spiritual, theological underpinning to that and church stuff in that. But where'd you go?
I'm just thinking, ladies, run. Just run for the hills. Keep going.
I never questioned, I never conceptualized, like, no, what's going on with you and your sexuality is broken. I thought, no, I just don't have the right outlet. I know I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing before we're married. And then, of course, I knew I shouldn't have been doing what I was doing once we were married. But the idea that, like, the broken lies in here until recovery, I never conceptualized that.
Okay. Well, I'm going to need, I don't know. Okay. Ladies, I don't even know how to respond to you. We're going to have to deal with that later. Ladies, I just want you to know that your availability and willingness to have sex with him is not the determinant on his integrity.
It's not.
It is not. Thank you for confirming that again. No. That is way too much pressure that is put on us. These are, and I don't know which episode we talk about the 5, but I could find it. But this is stuff that happened so far back in his past before you guys even met, that all came together for him to cope in an unhealthy way with sex. This is not about your willingness or your availability.
Even if it didn't start before her, it's still totally not about that.
Exactly. So what I want to say for women, in addition, is I feel like women are pushed against a wall because they desperately, we have committed our lives to this man. We desperately want to make the marriage work. Most of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're willing to do whatever it takes, including having sex or being sexual in whatever way he wants, needs, desires, blah, blah, blah. And so we're pushed up against the wall because we do feel like we have to play a part. If we don't do this or that with our husband, he will go outside the marriage. He will look at porn, whatever the case.
You're saying that's the
be.
belief.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's like a lot of pressure for us.
Right.
So much pressure. We put pressure on ourselves. We feel the pressure coming through the wire from him.
Mm-hmm.
We get it from church. We get it from our culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think we start to believe that in order to save the marriage, we have to make ourselves available.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are pushed up against a wall.
Yeah, I agree.
Which makes it really hard. And so I think really the question is, what does she need to work on to get to a place where she can set boundaries, and create space regarding sex in the marriage?
So I think there's a preface to that.
Okay.
And that's just to say, for the record, that is really hard for a lot of wives.
Yes.
It's really hard to say, hey, I need some boundaries around this. Hey, I'm not willing to participate the way I have in the past.
Yeah.
That's not, for some wives, it's like, oh yeah, I decided that today. Boom. Now that's the deal.
Mm-hmm.
For most wives, it's not that easy. And there are, what you're leading to there, it's like, okay, what does she need in order to be at a place to say that? Because it is really hard for some wives. And the pushback, and so husbands, as you're listening to this, know that if she starts to step into some boundaries and some space and detachment around sexuality, your pressure, your resistance or reluctance is only going to double down on what is already tremendously difficult.
Mm-hmm. And I think what we need to do, because I think we need to back up for a second even further. I think first we have to ask, is this happening in the relationship?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, what we've talked about for the last 20 minutes, let's just pause and go to the big question. How will we know? Okay. How will we know? And then I can walk women through what goes into getting to a place where you can set a boundary and say, enough is enough.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be, complicit to this, right. Or I don't even like that word, but I'm not. No.
Yeah.
We're stuck here.
Yeah.
Okay. So how will she know?
Yeah.
What are the signs?
Well, I think the easiest one is pressure.
Okay.
And that sometimes emanates from him.
Pressure to be sexually intimate or again, when we're talking about this, we're talking about acts of sex, but we're also talking about all the things surrounding that.
I mean, right. And there could be so many things.
Totally.
It can be very subtle.
Totally.
And still him sexualizing her.
Yes.
Okay.
So pressure from him.
Yep.
Or pressure from within herself.
Yes.
And that, you can speak to this better than I can, but for a lot of wives, they talk about like, there's almost like this teeter-totter thing. Like there's an appropriate, I want to be with him, be sexual with him, be available to, I want to. And somewhere it teeters into, I feel like I have to. And it's a wonky little delicate place in there.
Yeah.
Right. But for her to be aware within herself, I feel more have to than want to. That's a tell.
Yes. Yes. I love how you say that. I want to versus I have to. I definitely felt that. I felt that conundrum of I wanted to. I felt closer to you than I ever had. And I also did feel like I had to.
Yeah.
And it was subtle, and it was kind of like something I could kind of push away,
mm-hmm.
And not recognize, like, no, don't worry about that.
Yeah.
But I did feel pressure and felt like I needed to make myself available to you.
And that's one of the things for me that I do, that's a big regret, right? I mean, I feel like that's a fairly frequent conversation with us. Those of, for you listening, I will pursue you and let you know I want to be sexually intimate, but I also frequently talk about, hey, I want to make sure you don't feel pressure because I have a lot of regret around the amount of pressure that I put on you in those in our early marriage and even in early recovery.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I appreciate that.
Ugh.
Thank you. Yes. Signs he's doing good recovery work. He's aware of the pressure and speaks to that and doesn't like, hey, I don't want to do what I've done in the past and has a conversation about it. Along with that is women just asking themselves, do you feel obligated? If you feel obligated, we need to be curious about that.
Yeah.
What makes you feel obligated?
Right.
Is it because you think if I don't participate, he will go somewhere else?
Or not even go somewhere else. He'll withhold love, pull back, isolate, get passive, let off the gas of recovery, fill in the blank.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. What else?
What else? I think about building blocks of intimacy. So anytime we talk about sexual intimacy, I think building blocks of intimacy. And this idea that intimacy is holistic and sexual is just one facet. And so if we think about, spiritual, emotional, recreational, non-sexual touch, all these things, if we think about those and we just extract sexual and we kind of go, okay, is there a way in which we're engaging sexually that feels like it's kind of disconnected from and sits apart from other intimacy, holistic intimacy? That's a sign that it's being used as part of the addiction, because that's exactly what we did in our addiction. That's exactly what pornography is, right? False intimacy, and intimacy that's disconnected from a whole. So I think there's we don't ever want the building blocks to be check boxes. Like that's not what it's intended to be, but it can be informative. That's how I'll say it.
Well said. Okay. And what's the fourth thing on how do I know?
Yeah. So this is harder to talk about, I think. So there are some tells that I would say are important to look at and just be mindful of. And so I'm going to first say for husbands, I think you got to do some real heart work here, in terms of checking yourself around these things. And as a wife, I'm encouraging you to be really objective as you kind of step back and look at, are these things present? Okay. So a couple of tells. First is she feels objectified. So she feels that sense of like, I don't want you looking at me while I'm changing. I don't want you in the bathroom when I'm getting out of the shower. I don't like the way you look at me when I walk into my pajamas. The comments about clothing, the comments about body. If she feels like, am I more of an object or a person to you? That's tell. Right. And then a focus on more. And so I want to kind of bullet point these out.
He begins to focus on more.
Or she does.
Oh, okay.
Or she does. Because again, it can be coming from a really genuine place. But again, without either of them realizing it, it can be feeding into the addiction. So when I think more, I think a handful of things. So more frequent. So I hear things like, yeah, he's asking for sexual intimacy from his wife 5 times a day. Some people look at that and go, more power to him. And some people would look at that and go, that's broken. And
the latter is the accurate one, just to be clear. That's
yes.
broken.
Like, okay, so more frequency.
Well, let me get this. So you have a sexual addiction, a history of a sexual addiction, and now you're pressuring her to do it 5 times a day. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, keep going.
So more frequency, more erotic. So the focus becomes, how can this be more intensified, not more connecting, more shameful or harmful, starting to do things that are humiliating, or asking to do things that are humiliating, or that are physically injuring you, more fringe, sinful, risky. And so, like, I think about this relative to the disclosures that we go through, and it's like, you know, some of the places where sexual acts are taking place are not sacred, are not connected and God honoring, right? Which is another one of those things. Like, is there a sacredness to it? Does it feel like it's something that is special and sacred, and like there's an honor to it? Or does it feel like it's kind of demeaned into an act we do, and it doesn't really matter where we do it? Last thing is, I feel like, and this is so subtle, but I feel like there can be a sort of cavalier attitude about it from a husband. It can be from a wife too, but especially from a husband. Kind of a cavalier attitude about it. Like, when we're doing it and where we're doing it and what else we're doing with it. Like, you know, this is an example where a husband says, you know, send me photos. And she's going, no, like, our kids look at my phone. Like, I'm not going to, and he's like, oh, come on, you know, like, don't worry about it. And it's like, hi, Flute. It's like there's a cavalierness with which he operates around sexual intimacy or things related to it. Any of those or all of those would be a tell that sexuality within the marriage is sort of moving into or being used as part of the addiction.
Can we also, would another tell be if she feels responsible? If she feels responsible to be available. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
So those are the things we want you guys to be thinking about, to know, hey, is this happening? And if it is happening, it needs to stop, because
I'll back up a step.
Okay. Okay.
I think there's also, sometimes, you know, the things that don't need to be said are the things that you actually need to say. I think there's also a 1-for-1 transfer from the infidelities and the betrayal, addictive stuff. There's a 1-for-1 transfer that sometimes is so obvious that it hides in plain sight. So it's like the photos. It's like, I was asking for photos from my affair partner. Well, I'm not doing that anymore. Why don't you send me photos? It's like 1-for-1. Well, we used to go to the casino. My affair partner and I used to go to the casino. How about you and I start going to the casino? Again, it hides in plain sight. It's like, that's what you used to do in your addiction, and now you're just doing it in your marriage, and it doesn't sometimes trip the wire. So I think another tell is when we're doing things in the marriage that we were absolutely doing outside the marriage, and that's broken.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. You were starting to say.
No, you're good. So if this is happening, you know, one is like, to answer that question, is this happening in the relationship? And it's so important, for this will stall out a recovery like nothing else until, and sometimes it takes time for even her to be willing to look at this and to see, like, and name it. And so that's where I want to shift for the rest of our time, is what are the steps she can take to get to a place where essentially she says, we're not doing this anymore. You need to get help. I need safety for myself, for my body. And that's actually going to really help push the recovery forward.
Yes.
Obviously.
Yes.
Right. Back to the whole, like, oh, just don't do drive-thrus with your food addiction. Only eat at home.
Right.
Like, what is that going to help?
Nothing.
Okay. So a couple of things. One is for her to talk to someone about it. and in that, and obviously a safe person, and to be able to release some of the shame. A lot of women carry a lot of shame. They don't even realize it, but they carry a lot of shame around this, around being, agreeing to be available and willing, and maybe not even fully realizing that they were doing it or feeling responsible in that way.
Yeah.
Number 2 is to really, we talked about the enough is enough muscle and honing in on it. What goes into that is realizing that we cannot save him. A big part of my process, and I think it was helpful in our coupleship recovery, was I was like, I can't save you. I can partner with you in some ways, but not in the sexual realm, but I cannot save you. You have to do this work yourself. And I think that's another big myth. I think that's kind of old school recovery, is just support him. Just be there he didn't want this, you didn't want this, and sit with him in this. Do you like how the tone of my voice changed?
It's kind of like, it's giving me a little bit of uncomfortable.
And I'm like, I don't think that works very well. I'm just going to say that, if I line up 10 women that are on the other side and healing and living a full life, they didn't do that.
Right.
They did not do that.
They probably survived betrayal, but the likelihood of thriving after betrayal is low.
Right. I also think that that we have to really work on fortitude, which is strength under pressure. And that's a whole other podcast episode. How do we work on fortitude? But recognizing we can't save him, working on being strong within ourselves, and being clear about what we're okay with and not okay with. Take the boundary class. That's kind of all about fortitude. And so that would help with just working on strengthening the enough is enough muscle. And then number 3 is getting honest. For women to connect with our bodies and to get honest with what they're experiencing in their bodies. We've talked about this, I feel like, a little bit already. I think this is also a telltale sign. If she freezes whenever he touches her or whenever he approaches her to engage in sexual intimacy, if she just kind of dissociates and just kind of numbs herself out in order to be able to go through with
or
the
not
sexual
even
intimacy.
not even that, not even the sexual intimacy, but the same thing. He reaches over to grab her hand in church, and it's she goes,
yeah, and then just kind of okay.
Whether that leads to sexual intimacy, just being aware of even those places, even that aren't the most intense moments.
Yeah.
Keep going. Sorry.
Does she appease? So it's kind of looking at our sympathetic nervous system and our response to when something doesn't feel safe. Fight, flight, freeze, appease is what I'm kind of going through. But is the motivation don't want to ruffle any feathers? Yep, we can hold hands. Just don't want him to get upset. Don't want him to act out tonight. So yep, let's go ahead and hold hands. And so if she's able to connect to her body and then name what she's experiencing, that's also going to help her, I believe, get to a place to come to terms with oh, this isn't working for me and I need space and I need to set some boundaries here. We need to talk about this and we need to take sex off the table.
Yeah.
Again, you can loop back to episode 19 where we talk about sexual abstinence in the recovery process. And that would be a good piggyback off of what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
But I think the bottom line is there's, number 1, we want you guys to be looking for this. We want to put words to it. This is a huge piece that I feel like I'm just seeing more and more and more that needs to be addressed early on in recovery. And number 2, know that for her, typically because her back is against the wall and she does feel pressure to save the marriage in this way, better have sex with him so I can save the marriage. Not to mention, back to that, it also in some ways, it can minimize some of the chronic and acute shame we're experiencing that we're even in this place to begin with.
How so?
there was a lot of shame for me that like, yeah, I'm married to this man and he has a sexual addiction. Like, no, I'm actually a good sexual partner. And let me prove it to you. Let me prove it to the world. Yeah. When do you want to have sex? Let's go. Come on. Does that make sense? So in some ways, I tried to use it to mitigate the shame that I was experiencing.
Yeah.
And I was hurting myself in the long run. So I think the other piece is, number one, is this happening? Number two, I want women to know that it's a process for us women to like come to terms with it and to take steps toward saying enough is enough. No more.
I agree. I'm actually, I want to go back to something you're saying there because I'm thinking about how, I'm thinking about how there is oftentimes there's like a sexual honeymoon post disclosure, and people will say, husband and wife alike will say like, this is what I've always wanted. This is what I've hoped for. This is how I thought it should be. And there's like an ease and an intimacy and a closeness. And there's like new vulnerability after she knows him fully and he's known fully. And like, there's some very real intimate dynamics in there. And it also like, I kind of brace a little bit when somebody says like, yeah, we're 6 months since disclosure and our sex life is better than it's ever been. I kind of go, oh.
Agreed.
Because probably what's happening is the addiction got transferred.
Totally.
Right.
And I also, when I hear that, I think, that's going to come to an end.
Yeah.
The honeymoon ends.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of our story,
for sure.
and it's hard.
Okay. Last thing I want to say on that, and I'll let you finish. I do feel like we have to be careful that we don't make this binary. So I mentioned this to you when we were kind of prepping. We got to be careful we don't make this binary. Like, it's hard to tell. Even 2 decades later, sometimes it's hard to tell. And it's not binary. It's not, you can't just go, it's either healthy or unhealthy. We kind of have to.
You mean it's not black and white?
Yeah.
Binary doesn't really make sense to me. So it's not black and white.
Right. There's a continuum of like, is our sexual relationship healthy? And is it healthier? Is it less healthy because it looks more like the addiction used to look? Like, there are some things that are like, it's 1 for 1. Don't do that here. Don't do this, but you did there. Some of that is real. But I don't want somebody listening to be going, okay, well, we have to make sure it's absolutely, it was white, now it needs to be black. It was unhealthy, now it's got to be healthy. It's like, there's a continuum and a process and a messy.
Yeah, it's dynamic.
Yeah, dynamic. That's a good word. Mm-hmm. It's important for us to look at this. And if it is that the addiction mainly is transferred into the relationship, it will halt recovery, like you said. And it's hard sometimes to tell.
Yeah, absolutely. Did I say when I was talking about just, okay, what can she work on when she sees this is happening? Did I mention talking to someone about it?
You did the first one.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay,
that's
good.
the first thing.
I'm glad I mentioned that.
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure. Okay, I think we're going to put a pin in it. We will be back with the building blocks of intimacy and talk a little bit more about that. I think that's going to help with this conversation. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Also know that there are so many amazing resources in the podcast freebie file. And so look in the show notes. You can click on that and get those sent to your email inbox. We update those throughout the season. And so if you have an old email, you do have to reach out to us and say, hey, can you resend it to me? Once your email is in our system, it won't resend it, even if you keep like putting your email into the podcast freebie folder, if you will. So I think that's it for today. Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.